Every team working towards a goal is really a project team. Whether you are a project manager or not, whether you realize this or not, if you're working with scope, time, people, and other resources to pull them together to get a goal achieved, then you're managing projects. So today we're going to be looking at the fundamental elements of project management and some key concepts and terminologies that we all should be aware of. So let's dive right in. Why project styles matter, and we need to start with this. I would think in an accelerated pace of work where modern work is demanding faster delivery, deeper collaboration, we absolutely need to understand the project styles that are being used. There are two fundamental styles. There's the traditional one that is called a waterfall framework. And if you picture a waterfall where you have a mass of water at the top and it rolls down different levels until it gets to the base, it's a linear process and it's very well defined with phases and comprehensive documentation. That's sort of what the waterfall framework is about. The agile framework, which came out of the IT industry, is more iterative and it sort of seeks to get more feedback from the end user on smaller fractions of the offering before you go to the very end to deliver for feedback. So that's a part of what agile is about. And then there's the mixed methodology where if you look at the way many of the world's practical projects are, there's a mix of both or even some other operational stuff in it. So that's a part of why we need to look at project styles and understand some of these concepts. So before we get into that, let's look at the story of the hat. The hat that I'm wearing is a part of my story. It's one of my favorite restaurants at Universal City Walk in Orlando, and I have spent several years of my career in recent times in the Orlando area working either directly with Universal or with other clients who worked with Universal or with other theme park industry and entertainment based spaces. So this restaurant, Toothsome Chocolate Emporium and Savory Feast Kitchen, quite a long name for a restaurant, is one of my favorites in City Walk in Orlando, and that's the hat that I'm wearing today. All right, so back to business. Project Management 101 is sort of the broad title for this, and I want to get into some fundamental concepts so that we can all have the same vocabulary. We have to deliver value. We are creating measurable benefits that exceeds stakeholders' expectation. That's a part of what we're doing, and we need to understand the techniques that are important in this. Strategic approaches that can optimize workflow and drive results. We have to understand the tools that we are going to have at our disposal and the tools that we're going to be using, both digital and physical tools. And the thing that I like to say about tools, every time I talk, teach, coach on tools, I say a tool is going to be as useful to you as how much you know how to use that tool. It doesn't matter what the tool can do, absolutely. It has to be that you are comfortable doing it with ease and no friction. You absolutely need skills, essential skills in terms of leading teams, navigating challenges, working with people. When we think of project management, oftentimes we think of technical, think of Gantt chart, we think of schedules, we think of managing costs. But a significant part of project management is managing people and managing people, accepting change and learning processes and cooperation and conflict resolution. So those skills that are often called soft skills are just as important as the technical skills. So the building blocks of every project. Let's look at the building blocks of every project. At a high level, we have cost, time, quality, risk, and scope. And if we were to view them one at a time, let's focus in on scope. Scope is just clearly defining the boundaries and deliverables of the project. And one of the best ways to define scope when you get into certain projects is to define exclusions. We will not be going beyond version 5. We will, when you have like a drawing for a construction project, they have a line that says outside of the bounds of the project. So if there is something that needs some development or fixing there, it was never inside of the scope. So the scope clearly defines the boundary, and oftentimes we go into projects being naive and thinking it's easy to define scope. As a project manager, one of the things that you have to be on the lookout for is what we call scope gap. And we're going to talk about that, where stuff is just forgotten, it's not involved in, it's not included in anybody's scope, and then it creates an issue. Time is a schedule framework which includes deadlines, milestones are where you want to get to at a certain point in time, and deliverable dates. That's sort of time. Cost, the financial parameters, the financial impact, how much is it going to be in terms of financial commitment to achieve this for labor, equipment, material, overheads, you name it. And of course, we want to deliver a product with a certain quality, and you have to define that quality. Depending on what you're doing, you may need the Taj Mahal. In other cases, you just need an umbrella. So you have to understand, based on the needs, what the quality requirements are. And in every project, there are risks. And we're going to spend some time talking about this. Risk management is one of the concepts that I met when I studied project management formally, that I never met when I was learning it in the field. And it is super important, and there's going to be a whole video on risk management to sort of help you understand some of the theoretical aspects of it, and I will bring it to a practical sense to show the minimum that every project manager should be doing in terms of risk, potential obstacles, and the corresponding mitigation strategies. That's the important part. When we think of risk, we think of, oh, this guy is such a pessimist, you think that this is going to go wrong, that's going to go wrong. That's not what risk management is about. Risk management is about identifying potential themes and specifics as to what can go wrong, and creating a strategic approach to said risk. All right, so that's super important. Effective communication, as always, it serves as the foundation, and it keeps the stakeholders involved. The project life cycle is sort of brought together with effective communication, and that is an important resource that you need to be able to develop, as in your ability to communicate effectively. All right, so the two approaches to delivering scopes. There's the waterfall approach, and if you look here, you will see it's a waterfall. Water comes down, it goes into a next section, then it comes down, it goes into a next section. So you may have some design, some testing, some deployment, and this is sort of how it works in terms of the flow. The other approach is what is called the Scrum Agile approach, which is more iterative approach. If you look at this, it's sort of a constant cycle. So if you are trying to deliver a product, let's say you're trying to develop a new app, you may create the base of the app where people can just log a comment, or they can order items for delivery. But in the first publication of that, you cannot, for instance, you may not even be able to pay. You may be able to order, and you have to be sent a QR code, and you pay using that QR code. And you could push that as a completed deliverable for people to use. Then on the next iteration, the next what we call a sprint, you could incorporate payment in the website, because it will take you longer to develop the app for people to request and order. And then it takes you longer to go and develop the payment process. So this one here is more when you can have a standalone what we call a minimum viable product, something that is useful to the consumer, to the end user, and you focus on producing that, and that's your focus. And when you're finished, you look at adding a layer to that, and so on and so forth. This whole idea of Scrum and Scrum teams and how we manage that is worth looking at. There is this concept of what we call a sprint. And a sprint is usually a 1 to 4 week of focused deliverable cycle. So you create a target, a minimum viable product that can be achieved in 1 to 4 weeks. And you are doing what we call stand-ups, which is a 15-minute daily sort of meeting. And then you'd have a review at the end of the sprint. You're demonstrating what you have and doing feedback. And we always do what we call a retrospective, which is reflect on the sprint for the purposes of continuous improvement. So this here represents a sort of targeted focus work on a smaller scope rather than waterfall, which is focused on the massive long-term objectives. The work item, we talk about product backlog. We're going to talk about sprint backlog. We're going to talk about user story. The key roles in managing a sprint is 2 key roles. There's what is called a Scrum Master, which is it's a person who is going to coach the team to remove impediments. And then there's a product owner, which is the person who is trying to maximize the value, maintain the quality of what is being produced with the stakeholders in mind. And a typical part of sprint is having what we call a daily stand-up. And there are 3 fundamental questions. What did we achieve yesterday? What task did I complete yesterday that moved our sprint forward towards the goal? The second one is, what is today's plan? What specific item will I accomplish today to maintain the momentum of the team? And the third one is, what blockers, what impediments, what is stopping me from achieving these objectives? Everybody quickly and very focused answers to these questions are given in what we call a stand-up. And there's a reason for it being called a stand-up, because you want it to be quick, you want it to be focused, and you want it to be specifically talking about these 3 things. It's a super powerful concept. How they handle work differently, the waterfall versus the Scrum. Let's take a look at it. In the waterfall approach, when we talk about scope, it's fixed, and at the onset of the project, you know what you're getting into. Massive construction projects have not gotten away from being able to use the waterfall approach, because you sort of know what the end product is, and you can't deliver. You can deliver a construction project in phases, but if you think of one area, you can't dissect that anymore. So you have a fixed scope at the onset. With Scrum, there's some amount of adaptability throughout, based on feedback, and when one sprint learns from the previous one, you may make adjustment. Planning becomes comprehensive and it's upfront in terms of the waterfall approach. With Scrum, it's iterative based on the sprints, and the deliverable is a single final release when it comes to waterfall. So you're delivering this product at the end of it. Whereas with Agile and Scrum, you're delivering things in pieces. And when I say pieces, it's comprehensive, usable pieces. So you may have constant updates to a software. You may have constant updates to a design. You may have additional functionalities being released based on what you are managing. In terms of managing changes and doing change management, it's very formal in Waterfall, where you have formal change requests, and that can become very complex in the biggest projects, and it can be a simple conversation on smaller projects. And when it comes to Scrum, we sort of talk about prioritizing in what we call a backlog, where you shove things on a list of what needs to be done, what should have been done, and then you review it, and that process leads to changes if changes are going to happen. Collaboration in Waterfall tends to be what is described as silos, which is you have a team and the team sort of becomes separate from the rest of the organization or the rest of the other teams that they're working around. Cross-functional daily means with Scrum, you tend to be focused on the goal, and the goal usually transcends a team. So the goal transcends a team, and you are focused on the objectives that you have for that sprint more than anything else. The hybrid methodology in action is probably the strongest, most common approach, because nothing is going to be cut and dry where it can be a full waterfall and that's the best approach and nothing else works, so it can be a full sprint, agile type approach. It's always going to be a mix. So establishing fixed requirements upfront, identify non-negotiable elements that require traditional planning. You have to find those and yield to them and have them drive what you're doing. You integrate Scrum along the way. So in doing that, the way you manage, the way you implement daily stand-up, the way you review smaller fractions that you're working towards, and having retrospectives within the established timeline. So you're managing with this long-term goal, but you're treating each sort of milestone, each period of time as a sprint. You have a very clearly defined, achievable. You're managing with daily stand-up, so you're looking at those three things we spoke about, where people are focused on what happened yesterday, what we need to do today to keep the momentum, and what are the blockers that we have that we need to review to help us continue the momentum. And you develop a consistent deliverable rhythm where you are embedding the Scrum cycle, even though you're working towards a waterfall type deliverable in a traditional project framework, and you are trying to just push in small segments to get the team moving towards the massive goal. And you embrace responsive adaptation. It continues. You continuously have to evaluate and adjust your methodology between the complexities of a project and the sprints, which are short and focused, and you have priorities that are sort of constantly evolving. So the hybrid approach sort of looks at it from that point of view. All right, so some of the key highlights that I want to point out, there are proven methodologies, two massive proven methodologies, and if we are into the world of project management, we have to know the terminologies, understand the difference between Scrum, Waterfall, and using them to deliver consistent results. They have what I consider complementary advantages in that with a agile, you have that very focused day-to-day momentum moving because you have specific targets. Imagine if you're in a stand-up and you commit that for today I'm working on sections A, B, and C. Then it keeps you more committed to achieving that than if your goal is working towards a big macro goal that is 6 months down the line. It gives you very small bite size that you know you are on your way towards the big goal. And obviously some projects just have some massive structure that you can't get away from bringing it all together with the one deliverable being sort of long-term or medium-term. But both Waterfall and Scrum have this sort of complementary advantage that if we were to understand what they both do and mix them where we're smart and necessary, we will become smarter managers, and that's a part of what we're all about here. So the integration agile practice can strengthen traditional project framework. No doubt about that. If you understand what the agile framework is, you will be able to implement it a little bit in what for most of us will be traditional project management. And obviously you're tailoring the implementation, customizing your approach based on the project scope and the team dynamics and all of what you will know as the PM, the team lead, whatever your title or role is. You're using project management concepts in order to achieve those objectives. So on your next project, I'm challenging you to, in your path to becoming a smarter manager, just try this. Try doing the daily stand-up. It's a focused 15-minute block of time where you're focused on the 3 questions. Each person gets a chance to speak to that. And typically, let me mention it now, Scrum teams are relatively small. You try not to exceed maybe 8 or 9 persons on a Scrum team, just to sort of keep the focus. And each person is saying, reporting to the team, what did we achieve yesterday? And I often like to add the what I consider the 3rd question next, which is, what blockers did you have, do you foresee will prevent you from getting into number 3, which is what you hope to achieve today. So those 3 questions are super important, and you get everybody to do that, and then the team, you as the leader, the facilitator, will work to remove those blockers and help everybody move through. Weekly scope review, you absolutely have to sort of validate where you are each week, compare that to your timeline. There's a concept called intermittent milestones, which I will expound on later on in this channel. And essentially what it is, we have a long-term goal and you create milestones. Where do you want to be in a month? Where do you want to be in 2 months? Where do you want to be in 3 months? And you manage towards that, and you manage in an aggressive way to have small pushes and measurable achievements, as opposed to just going along in the first 6 months and you realize you have 2 months of work left to do in a week because you weren't monitoring your progress. You absolutely have to perform retrospectives, which is analyzing what's happening as you move through to achieve key milestones. It's super important to have these retrospectives be one that addresses fundamental approaches, fundamental concepts, and not get into a blame game where you were supposed to do this and you didn't, and this was late. You're looking at concepts and blockers that you need to, as the PM, help to remove. One agile habit: integrate small practices for significant workflow improvement. And again, it may be a waterfall approach, but for this 2 weeks, we have this goal and we're treating it as sort of an agile project where we're pushing, we're looking at the 3 questions every day, and we're trying to keep momentum in an effort to get to the actual outcome that we want. All right, so continue your journey with me. Go ahead, please consider subscribing to this channel. It will help me in terms of growth and reaching more people. Get actionable weekly tips just coming straight to your inbox. We're committed to sending out content so that you can continue to grow. There are courses here. There's one particular course that is being offered for free, and it's in the link in the comments below. There's an Excel course I recorded way back during the pandemic when I had the bandwidth that I'm offering now. If you want to consume it, it's there. I'll give you a discount code that removes the cost, so you get it for free. If you want to learn the concepts of Excel, spreadsheets, then it's totally there for you. If you have someone who is getting in the industry, just starting, and needs that type of background, then it's there. We're gonna always continue to give you resources that you can utilize. And obviously, if you need some consulting work, you need to reach out to say, hey, let's have a conversation about some tools that you're using. Then I'm absolutely available for that as well. There is going to be a link in the comment section where you can book a discovery call with me. There's a massive Smartsheet training that is ready to go, and I'm going to get into how Smartsheet is one of the tools that I utilize a lot. So that is also a part of what is offered. And again, thank you. Please feel free to share this with a friend, somebody who you think would benefit from this, and continue to stay with me on this journey where we all work towards becoming smarter managers. All right, have a good one.